Cutthroat Season 2, here we go! Plus, Logan breaks it off with Big T and then maybe breaks a bone in his leg. Cory plots some revenge. Devin continues to run the game, but now doing so more publicly. We get the backstory and reasons behind Bettina and Priscilla's desire to win, and the whole house is green with envy over the Emerald team. But should they be? It's the challenge, Spies, Lies, and Allies, Episode 10 recap coming up right now. What up, my fellow challenge lovers? Welcome to the Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things MTV's The Challenge, past, present, or future. Sometimes with these all-star seasons, a combination of the both. If it's happening in the Challenge universe, then we are here to document it. I am your host and dedicated Challenge Historian, Jacob Hollabaugh. Thank you so very, very, very much for being here with us today. It's a big podcast today. So much to talk about. Episode 10 is in the books, and as we enter the second half of the season, we have entered a whole new game. Out with the partners, in with the teams. We've basically turned this from Double Agents 2 into Cutthroat 2 with a little twist added on at the end. This episode had so much, and that is on top of the absolute bomb that was dropped outside of season 37. That was the trailer for All Stars season 2, not just coming, but is damn near already here. The trailer drop, that season's coming in 4 weeks' time, 4 weeks from tomorrow, or today, whenever you're listening to this podcast, 4 weeks from Thursday, which means we will be double dipping on Challenge. Goodness, oh my God, times they are good, people. But even with that big news and big announcement, even if it is coming sooner than expected, we need time to properly digest this All-Stars announcement and the cast, and we will, of course, break it all down for you very, very soon on its own complete podcast. Don't worry, we've got a lot of thoughts on it. But for today, it's all Spies, Lies, and Allies, Episode 10, baby, because it was a great one, and we've got a lot to cover. Now, our agenda, as always, will be the following. First up, a Cliff Notes recap of everything that just went down. Second, we will break down the whole episode through the lens of the main storyline. Third, we will check in on a couple little things that we noticed, aka the secondary storylines. Follow that up with an analysis of our sporting events, and finally, we will hand out some awards, update those power rankings, and give out one new prediction for the season moving forward. So much to get to, so little time. So if you are ready, I am ready. Spies, Lies, and Allies, Episode 10. Let's go. We must begin where we always do, with a quick Cliff Notes, I shouldn't even say quick, a Cliff Notes recap of everything that just went down. It's 90 minutes of action-packed, and I shouldn't say that either. It's like 65 minutes of action-packed content with all those commercials that MTV likes to do. But it's a lot that goes down, and this episode was no exception, with so much new things happening, a lot of different storylines coming in and out. So, Cliff Notes recap as quickly as we can, but covering everything that happened plot-wise, storyline-wise, in this episode, Episode 10 of Spies, Lies, and Allies. So here we go, as quickly as we can. 3, 2, 1, and begin. Back in the house and confused. No more partners, maybe, but what would that mean? Cory doesn't know, but he knows this. He wants revenge, and his list is Kyle, Amanda, Ashley, in that order. CT and Tori chit-chat, and after throwing some shade at Amber, CT predicts it's still pairs, and they will just be picking brand new partners the next day. Then the next day comes, and we learn about Bettina and Priscilla's reasons for playing the game. Bettina wanting to represent for the small-town girls with big dreams. Priscilla for her mom, who is a first-generation immigrant to the UK, taking care of a massive family that relies on her so much. Nighttime then comes, and that means cuddle time for Big T and Logan. Or does it? Big T is in love with Logan. Logan turns out is only in love with Big T, and eventually would tell her so much. After, though, Big T gives him one heck of a bedtime story that we'll talk about later. Amanda then gets a call home to her son that's super sweet and emotional before we head off to the daily challenge to find out what this new format will be. At that challenge, TJ announces that they will not be in pairs any longer, but leaves it at that. They start the daily challenge as individuals, but then as they each finish the first portion of that challenge, they realize they get to pick a team to join. 3 teams to form Emerald, Sapphire, and Ruby, and not teams, but cells. Sorry, I'll get my lingo up soon enough. 3 cells to join. A lot of in-the-moment decision-making and strategizing leads to 3 new teams, I'm calling them teams, formed on the fly. Those new teams are Ruby, consisting of Emmy, Big T, Priscilla, Cory, Logan, and Kyle. Sapphire, consisting of CT, Nelson, Ed, Ashley, Amanda, and Bettina. And Emerald, consisting of Casey, Josh, Devin, Nani, Emmanuel, and Tori. If you would like to call them green, red, and blue, you can feel free to do so. I will likely be doing so myself. Those teams then compete in the second half of the daily, where the Emerald team takes home the W and becomes the new version of an agency. Back at the house, Emerald team is feeling good. Sapphire team is feeling good. Ruby team is very much not feeling good. Clearly the bottom of the 3 teams and acting like it. Cory tries to boost morale, but Kyle, he ain't having it. His eyes are set on the green team. We go to nominations where Emerald are told they have to pick one female to go into the lair. Devin lets all the ladies in the room know that no one is safe, so plead your case, hoping to start some fights. Doesn't totally happen. Everyone says their piece, and they vote. Priscilla is chosen to go in, the easy choice this stage of the game for the Emerald squad. At the lair, TJ drops another piece of his game-changing format-switching bomb by telling Priscilla she gets to pick who she goes against. She decides, I'm going all out. I'm going for the champ. I'm going for Ashley. They play Seek and Destroy, where they have to dig up 8 colored tiles and put them on a pole. Once all 8 are on that pole, they can go over, watch a color sequence, memorize it, come back and rearrange the tires into that right color sequence. First one done wins. From the start, Ashley uses her hands and her whole body to move sand around quick, find those tires, while Priscilla, in an attempt to save some energy for the long game, goes with her feet and legs. Ashley is much quicker and builds a lead that she never lets up. She gets all 8 tires out of the sand before Priscilla even gets to her 5th, and with some help from her vet friends, gets the code in no time and takes home the win. Priscilla goes home, a solid rookie campaign from her. TJ caps off his full-on attack on the format of this game by telling Ashley now she gets to pick which team she wants to rejoin, either rejoin or join. She decides she wants to stay with her bestie Amanda. Ashley goes back to the Sapphire squad. Cell, team, squad, whatever. She's back on the blue team, and that is where the episode ends. Wow. That was potentially our longest ever Cliff Notes recap, but a lot happened, and there you go. That's everything that happened. So let's now rewind all the way back to the episode. Now that we've kind of refreshed on everything we just saw, let's talk about the main storyline of the episode and kind of talk through the whole episode through that lens, which would be this brand new format and brand new game. All right, so main storyline of the whole episode was there was a cliffhanger at the end of last episode. We don't think there's going to be pairs anymore. What's it going to be? What's the format going to be? We're at the halfway point or crossed into the second half of an 18-episode season. This is episode 10. So where are we going from here? That was the whole story, and a lot happened on that front. We got all the answers, or at least we think for now. Who knows? TJ could switch it all up again very much later on. But as we discussed on our Tuesday review preview pod, we predicted it with the help of our friend Jake over at Challenge Edgic. We predicted that little theory that had popped up that in last week's elimination, there was the Cutthroat logo, or a logo that looked very, very, very similar to the Season 20 Challenge Cutthroat logo. And then when it popped up again in the next week in the preview of this episode that we just watched, on that board that they had to scratch away in the daily challenge. We'll talk more about that scratching later. But Cutthroat logo twice there, 2 big clues, and we predicted correctly that we were going to go for teams, not individuals, but teams. And TJ specifically, he, at first he kind of leads you towards it's going to be individuals by, starting the daily challenge with you will no longer be in pairs. But then he very, very curiously or specifically, however you want to look at it, left it at we will not be playing in pairs. All right, get ready to start the challenge. And everyone, they play it up. You could tell from the edit right away, at least those of us who even considering the ideas of teams, immediately I was like, oh, it's teams. Just look at what they're doing. We're setting up with all these confessionals. They all say, oh my God, we're individuals. This is all I wanted. I want to be my own, my own person in this game. I have my own back, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And you're like, oh, they're easily picking teams here any moment. And they do. They get to the halfway point of the challenge and find out right there in the middle, in the moment, as the challenge is going on, they've got to select new teams. And it is basically a version of Cutthroat. For those who maybe it has been a while, that season. When would that season have been? Cutthroat maybe like 2000. I don't even know. I'm not even going to guess. But season 20, so 2011, I'm currently watching Deep Dive on Fresh Meat 2, which is season 19, which is in 2010. So yeah, 2011. Here, the historian coming through clutch with that. So back in 2011, season 20, an iconic season of the challenge, just for the simple fact that that was the challenge where the Bananas backpack happened, where CT came in as a mercenary and picked Johnny Bananas up and threw him into a trash can. So everyone remembers the season pretty much just because that is the most famous moment in challenge history, if not one of the most famous moments in reality television history. But it was a very good season. I don't know. I will at some point in the future do my kind of greatest seasons ever rankings, put them all in order. I wouldn't have it quite, I don't think, in tier one best seasons ever, in the top tier. But definitely probably somewhere in tier two. It was a very good season. But the thing about it was one of the only seasons they've ever done a 3-team format the whole way through, 3 teams where the winning team is safe and the losing team, they could pick 2 people from one from each one, however it was, but one person goes home at a time, and teams end up being different numbers from each other. And in that one, kind of infamously, the final of Cutthroat was kind of wasn't all that exciting because it got down to a red team that had like 6 or 7 strong members all left, and there's the blue team that just had Jen and Emily Schramm left, which a great twosome, but when you're going up and you're doing a lot of running and having to lift a bunch of stuff and do puzzles, you got 7 people to do all of it versus 2. It was not even close. And then you had the gray squad in the middle with like 4 or 5 people left. But anyways, that was the season. Brad and Tori on the red team got their win. Tyler Duckworth got his first back-to-back wins. Who else was on that team? Dunbar was on that team, I believe. There's another person or two. Apologies to whoever I'm forgetting. But anyways, that was the 3-person team. They are now in 3-person. So this is kind of similar to that Cutthroat format, but as we'll get to in a moment, with the little twist on the end, that's still the double agents-esque or War of the Worlds 2-esque even now, when they had the turncoats then, where you can pick which team you go back to when you win the elimination. But we're kind of playing Cutthroat 2, and the big question for me as I watched this, it was very entertaining to watch them in the moment, have to figure out on the fly, how do we pick these teams? Nelly T gets there first. He does this whole, prayer to the challenge gods and whatnot, but he gets there, Josh gets there, and Cory gets there, and they decide, they all know here we're picking teams, and they all take their place on a different platform and say we'll be the team leaders and try to recruit people as they come in. My big question was when I talked about the possibility for it to be teams and predicted that it would be, my hope was really that there would be a draft, that they would somehow get to pick captains, whether they did some sort of challenge to pick those captains or CT just said you, and you, whatever it was. I really would have loved to see a draft out of this, but the in the moment was still very entertaining and very fun and caused a lot of, on the fly strategy, which leads to some fun moments for this cast for sure. And the kind of question in the moment, and we'll talk more about it later in awards for best and worst strategy. But there was kind of 2 strategies of thought that diverged very quickly as they assembled these teams. There was the initial one of Nelson and Cory, first and third person there, and they immediately say, no, we, veteran savvy. I think Cory even says in one of his confessionals, we ain't going to do the rookie thing and partner up. We got to be on different teams, so we got some power in all the spots. They were pretty much the only one who thought along those lines at all. Everyone else, almost across the board, went with where are my alliances at and where are the strongest players at, and that is what I'm going off of, and I'm not trying to split up my alliance in any sort of way. And so Nelly and Cory really backfires on them by the end of it. I mean, Nelson's in a great spot. His team, we'll talk about the teams in a moment, is looking great. Cory's not so much, but they kind of diverge strategy-wise from everyone else, and I think everyone else had the proper strategy. I know they don't have a lot of time to think about it. They walk up, they're like, wait, there's 3 teams. Some people are already here. Who's coming behind me? Who's next? How many guys do you have? How many girls do you already have? How many more can we get? Whatever. But you gotta, in that moment, be able to just stop and say, I don't have a lot of time to think this through. I just need to be on the best possible team. And for the most part, everyone tries to do that. And the other thing is you don't need to split your alliances up in this moment, because even if you don't know the rest of the format, eventually you're just going to want to win challenges, and you're just going to want to be safe on your own team. If someone is eventually from your team is going to have to go into elimination, and possibly if your team ends up sucking, going into eliminations a bunch of times, you want to be safe within your own team as much as anything else. You can have any enemies you want everywhere else. You want to be safe in your own team in this version of the game. And so Nelly T and Cory, as we'll talk about in Worst Strategy, I think they're, spoiler alert, a nominee for that because of that choice. We then get the teams. The teams all form. CT is the big prize, the big one in the kind of middle of the early on. Kind of he stands there, looks around. Everyone's begging for him to come over. Casey gets a lot of love as she comes up. Tori gets a lot of love as she comes up. But the final teams are, there's a Ruby squad, which we will likely just say red for most of the time. That is Emmy, Big T, Priscilla, Cory, Logan, and Kyle. There's the Sapphire team, CT, Nelson, Ed, Ashley, Amanda, Bettina, and the Emerald squad, Casey, Josh, Devin, Nani, Emmanuel, Tori. And looking at these squads, just first glance, the first time we kind of got to visualize them, and then eventually got to a commercial break where I typed them all out and kind of tried to take it all in. The Ruby team is fucked, like just through and through, especially with by the end of the episode, Priscilla, potentially their best female, going home. Their team isn't really stacking up well with the other two. The other two teams, very interesting, very competitive with each other. You've kind of got the Sapphire squad, where I would say has the definite edge on the male side of things. If we were just to split these teams up and say 3 teams of 3 males, 3 teams of 3 females, Sapphire would be the best team on the male side with CT, Nelson, and Ed. But on the female side, Emerald would definitely, in my mind, have the best team with Casey, Tori, and Nani, with respect to all the other competitors. But overall, I really like what the Sapphire team put together here. It was kind of by accident that Nelson put it together in the end, but he was the first one, so we give him credit for that. But you've got the 2 champions that are left, CT and Ashley. You've got pretty decent bonds between the team, with Ashley and Amanda kind of holding down the fort. And then, I kind of expect this is getting a little ahead of myself, but I fully expect Cory at the first chance is going to try to go into elimination and swap out with Ed and try to get there with his boy Nelly T. But pretty much they have CT, and as CT said in the episode, they've got 2 workhorses in Nelson and Ed to do all the physical grunt work. CT and Ashley and Amanda to kind of handle all of the puzzles and the strategy and whatnot. So we'll get to the power rankings later on, but they would be the top team for me. But pretty competitive between Sapphire and Emerald. Once the challenge is over, we go back to the house. We see, as we just kind of allude to, Emerald, Sapphire, great morale. Ruby, not so much. Couple notes on then we get to the nominations. We're still learning the rest of the format, and we find out, all right, it's going to be one individual eliminations, female week, male week, alternating. We assume we kind of knew that was our biggest argument for why we thought it might be individuals and not teams, is that with how many episodes are left, they had to start doing one person going home at a time and not 2. Couple notes on the nominations. They look really silly sitting like that. It was one of my favorite notes I went back and highlighted from this whole episode, was just the nomination deliberation room looked really cool up until this episode. Before, where it was this kind of like flying V, and there's 2 people sitting at the head of it and everyone sitting in a big crowd. Like it looked pretty cool. It was a really cool deliberation room. Now with 6, 6, and 6, it just, the 6 that are in the agency just do not fit up in the spot where there used to be 2. Now 6 of them, and I just thought they looked hilarious and silly. And also, from the format perspective, a 6-person vote, or potentially a 5-person vote, or 4-person, whatever it gets down to, can be really, really tricky. You got to really have consensus within your team, because with the 6-person vote, you only need 3 votes to get someone to go in. Really, you could tie 3-3 if you get a split amongst your group, but this could be something where one burn vote or one person, just saying, Everyone's kind of throwing out this person, but that's my friend. So I'm going to vote over here. And suddenly it only takes two others or one other if we get down to 5 or 4 people in a team that wins power. Not a lot of people have to want you out to get you into that layer. It's basically what we're saying. So that's an interesting new wrinkle. And then we get to the layer itself. We learn Priscilla gets to pick her opponent. We'll talk a little more about who she actually picks and why later on. But from the format perspective, we find out, yes, the agency votes one member of whatever sex is that week's elimination in. That person gets to pick, which adds yet another wrinkle and way more strategy on top of who would you actually want to throw in, knowing they could call someone out. And then once the elimination's over, we find out Ashley also gets to go back and pick her team. And as we mentioned earlier, gets to kind of continue doing the whole double agent, pick the partner thing, or a War of the Worlds turncoat, get to switch to the other team style of thing. And what we believe, I mean, it was quick, and then she ended up picking her, staying with her own team. So I guess we don't know 100% for sure, but what pretty clearly I think TJ said is if she were to have picked the red team, where she just eliminated someone from, she would just go to that team and their team would be back to 6 and the Sapphire would be down to 5, and there we go. If she would have picked the Emerald team, however, it sounded like she would get to replace someone. And I wonder, the only thing we don't know about the format is if the person who wins the elimination picks the agency team, or just picks the team that no one has gone home from, because there could be you could pick your own partner to go against, so it could end up with 2 Sapphire people down there in the layer together, whatever. But is it then, if Ashley would have picked the Emerald team, does Ashley get to pick which female she's replacing and bumping over to Sapphire, or does Emerald get to vote amongst themselves and decide, all right, Ashley's coming here, one of the 3 of us has to go, who's going? That is the only wrinkle we don't know moving forward, but I'm looking forward to finding out, because as we mentioned earlier, definitely think all of Team Ruby at some point is going to want to get into another team. We'll talk about it in predictions, but very likely that we see a lot of the Ruby team members who know their team just doesn't really stack up competitively, and none of them like each other. All their alliances are kind of on the other teams. They're just kind of the outcast team. I could very much see them right away saying, you know what, I'll go into elimination. I would love to join, in Kyle's instance, that Emerald team. In Cory's instance, that Sapphire team. I could even see next week, the way they've set up Cory and Kyle going at each other a little bit, maybe the 2 of them decide, hey, let's both go in. One of us will send the other home. The other one will get to pick the team we actually want to be on. So could see that happening. But moving forward, the strategy-wise, things get very, very interesting with all of these wrinkles. It's not just now you're in your teams. That's fun. You want to be the team that wins. Clearly, it has put even more onus on you want to win. Where before, when it was the pairs, you saw some people saying, CT wasn't even loving the fact that he won a time or 2 because he didn't want the power. He didn't want to get blood on his hands. He wanted to float, stay in the back, and he felt safe with so many numbers, this, that, and the other. The winning the daily challenge now takes a lot more precedence to just keep yourself safe, but you are still open to then having a player from your team swapped in or out, and it makes it really interesting who you want to throw into the layer. Do you just want to throw in someone that you want to get out, but they get to pick who they go against? So now if any of the guys in the house, if Devin and Josh, who we've heard a couple episodes ago, say, we don't want to run a final against CT, Emerald gets another win. Do they say, all right, we throw in CT, but then CT gets to pick who he goes against, and he's just going to pick the weakest guy out there, or see what the game is and pick, his best chance to beat person, which is anyone in the house probably, if we're talking CT in this hypothetical. But it's going to make who they pick very, very interesting. Who you pick to go against. Are people going to be like Priscilla and take big shots, big swings, or are they going to take the route of who do I perceive as the weakest, or if it looks like it's a puzzle, the kind of dumbest or whatever to go against? Are they going to try to go for the layup route? Are they going to try to take big shots? And then who's going to switch teams? And again, how does the switching teams work if the person gets to pick who they kick off, or does the team get to pick who they kick off? Because if it's the person, that adds even so much power to winning that elimination, to be able to go in and totally shake up a new team versus that team itself. Likely most of these people are going to be, if they're joining a new team, probably doing it to join some members of their alliance who might be on the same page of them. Like if you join this person's out, but could definitely see let's say Josh gets thrown in there or Devin actually maybe is a better one, gets thrown in there and decides, hey, Josh is kind of with Casey and Casey has Nani and Emmanuel, and I don't really feel like I'm actually that high up the rankings of my teams. Maybe I made a bad choice. Maybe I need to be over with CT, and I'm going to go in, and I'm not going to bump Ed out. I'm going to bump Nelson out because I think Ed can be on my side. Whatever, versus that team maybe says, get the rookie out of here, and Nelson has some sway, being friends with Ashley and Amanda. Who knows? So a lot of strategy to look forward to going forward. A very confusing game. I like this format in general. I don't love the 100% format switch halfway through the season. Can't say I'm a huge fan of that. I do long for the old days where episode 1, minute 1 of episode 1, TJ comes out and says, this is the game we're playing, these are the rules, this is the money that you can win in the end, and that's it. No big twist or anything going forward. I always kind of was a fan of that. I get it for the drama and the intrigue and everything that this version does have a lot of pros to it. So I will enjoy it. Cutthroat Season 2. I'm just calling the rest of the season Cutthroat Season 2. No more Spies, Lies, and Allies. We're in Cutthroat Season 2 moving forward. So that was your main storyline. That was kind of look at the whole episode. Now let's move into just a couple little small things that we noticed, aka our secondary storylines. All right, few little things that we noticed. We'll make this part pretty quick here. We went pretty long on that main story, but four things to discuss. First one is Logan. Logan has himself a little episode here on the side. We get a couple different stories with him. First one is he breaks up with Big T, which was just, I hate to say any sort of kind of pseudo breakup. I don't know that they were dating, or anything like that, but some little showman's breakup of sorts that Big T definitely seemed pretty infatuated with this guy. You don't want to say it's hilarious, but what we saw of it, the pool scene of starts with Josh and Logan, and Josh being like, oh, so, how's Big T? How was last night? Saw you guys were, in bed together. And Logan basically doesn't respond. It is just like, oh yeah, that situation. I've got to break a girl's heart, type of thing. You can just see it on his face. He's like, I care about this girl, but I don't care about her that way, and I got to tell her. And yeah, it wasn't that great, Josh. Thanks for asking. But then we get the last night, the kind of flashback in the story that Big T is telling Logan is so funny. We only get little bits of it, but something about a queen choosing some other guy, or another guy choosing a girl to be his queen, and then the girl was actually his mom, so he gouges his eyes out and blood's everywhere, and Logan is just looking horrified the whole time Big T's selling this. Big T's got the biggest smile on her face the whole time. She's like, this is the greatest bedtime story in the world. And then at the very end, she's like, oh, I've got plenty more of these stories. And Logan, I think that was the moment, I'm sure we don't see very much of what actually goes down in this house, so I'm sure there was a lot more that led up to Logan letting Big T eventually know, hey, I love you, but I love you as a friend, and I don't want to continue this, the sexual part of this if my heart's not in it. I don't want to do that to you. I think that was the moment he realized I've got to get out of this. I can't take these bedtime stories. That was just hilarious, that story. I would love Big T if she could maybe share on her Instagram or something the full story. We only got little snippets of it. I would love to hear the full story that she told Logan that night. But then Logan, a second little storyline, he's the last one, the last male, potentially the last one overall, because again, the way they edit this, kind of hard to tell. No, I think he got there before then the last 2 or 3 females that had to do the scratching, which we'll come back to again, because goddamn the scratching. But the last guy standing out before to come pick a team, and as he finally gets his code, gets into his safe, and he's running, and in the confessional he says he feels or hears a crack in his leg, which a crack in your leg is pretty extreme. So He jogs it out. He says, I'm going to finish this. And then the only other mention of it is a little bit later on at when Cory tries to kind of pump Team Ruby up at the bar. He says, we got to get this one right. We got to get him 100% because he's a big part of this team. So they allude to he's let some people know my leg's not 100%, but a crack in the leg. I mean, what the hell happened? Is he hurt? Is he going to get sent home next episode because he can't compete? Is he going to hurt himself further competing? Is he totally fine? We don't know. So that's something to be on the lookout moving forward, is maybe Logan might not be around a whole lot longer because of that injury, which would be a huge bummer because he's been so awesome as a rookie this season, having such a great season. And we moved him all the way up to second in our power rankings, the male power rankings last week, because we felt so high on him getting to a final, competing in a final. So that's one. Another little thing we saw, Tori Manuel didn't happen yet, but they are on the same team now. So while my prediction from Tuesday for this episode that we would see those two's little romance blossom didn't come to fruition, I'm still holding out that will come to fruition soon. And maybe now it'll be a celebratory, our team won today, we're all having fun at the bar, and hey, that guy's dancing all good. And, I still think we're going to see that sometime. Then the third little thing that we noticed, I think that's the third, maybe even the fourth time this season that this has happened. But Tori and CT, that alliance might be the strongest and the most powerful, just given the stature of those two competitors in the whole house. Because for the third or fourth time this season, we see immediately after a challenge or immediately after some sort of legit shakeup in the game, Tori and CT go to a room or to out by the pool or just somewhere away from everyone else and have a little powwow. That they're kind of the first one they each go to, and they always kind of do it outside the view of anyone else. It has been very much a quiet, but it's been enough times now that it just feels like those two kind of look at each other as, I would assume this is all just conjecture, but I would assume they look at each other as, we have a good relationship from... They won a final together back on War of the Worlds 2. I know I always say Tori won a final when she didn't, but essentially her team, she got cut at the last moment, couldn't get through the puzzle quicker than D. But they won a final together essentially on War of the Worlds 2. They seem to have always had a good relationship, never had any drama with each other, but I think they now both look at each other as, if I was predicting all season long, if this stayed pairs, that those two were going to try to link up for the final challenge and get that win together. But it seems like they definitely view each other as, their top alliance on the opposite sex, and just their kind of top dog in the house that they want to be close with, working with, and whatnot. Stray shots at Amber from CT, which was interesting that they kept that in there. That's really all I have to say about that. Anyways, the fourth and final thing is then the Amanda Ashley love fest, the edit between them. Seems like Ashley maybe took Nelson's comments last week in deliberation, as kind of ridiculous as they were. Maybe she took them to heart, or thought, maybe she thought, I have no idea how, in the moment, how this is going to be edited. Maybe they're going to take what Nelson said and run with it and make me look like this horrible friend who didn't help Amanda out when she kind of sacrificed herself for me, blah, 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 whatever. But she hams it up this episode. It's all genuine. Those two love each other. They are best friends, seem to be in real life. So it was all genuine, but it was also, you could be genuine and also ham it up at the same time. And Ashley was hamming up the, Amanda was on the front line. She's a hero. She's a single mom. I love her so much. I want to help take care of her, this, that, and the other, which again, all genuine, all great, loved it, but it was just over and over and over. It was like, all right, calm down. We get it. You guys are the best of friends, and Amanda is super duper impressive with everything she's doing in the real world off of this show. So, loved seeing all of that. The one part of it that was kind of the funniest to me is Ashley definitely in the confessional kind of tried to spin it a little bit, like she was going in for Amanda on Amanda's behalf when she had just gotten chosen to go into the lair. It wasn't like, I'm going to choose Amanda. No, I'll step up. I'll take that spot the way Amanda more or less did for Ashley back on Final Reckoning, and that Nelson did for Cory, on Total Madness. She kind of tried to spin it a little bit. I noticed it. And good on you, Ashley. Always, you got to play the game. You got to play the television game, the TV game of this. But Loved the love fest between those two. They were both wonderful. Glad to have them together on this season. Those were the secondary storylines. Let's now move into the sports segment. Let's analyze. Let's put our Sports Center anchor jacket on here and walk through the daily challenge and the elimination from a sports angle. First up, of our two sporting events, got our full classic episode, house, daily challenge, house, nominations, elimination. Love it when we get the classic setup. So we had our daily challenge, we had elimination. Let's talk the daily challenge first. And first comment on the daily challenge. I do not like when the people have to do different things. I understand that, they start off, I don't know what this thing was called. We'll get to later. I don't have a lot of notes on the daily challenge itself because of the whole switching up the teams and that just kind of taking up all the brain space. But I know that the first segment, they got to sprint out, find a sledgehammer in this pile of rubble, and then go over and choose one of three puzzle-esque options to solve a code, get a gem, and run to the picking teams station, as it would be. And I get that, there's got to be something that the run part has to matter, the finding the sledgehammer, and then you get the advantage of picking which of the three games you want to do to make it to the next segment. But I just don't love when it's not a fair, when not everyone has to do the same thing, because even if you give it that, like, everyone does the same thing up until a point and then it's your choice, and so you can build an advantage or a disadvantage, whatever. I want them to do the same thing the whole way through. It definitely seemed like the scratching was clearly way harder than the other two by a freaking mile. One, because fuck the scratching. Like, I cannot say this enough. The challenge producers, they make these people do some crazy shit from time to time. Every season, they make them look super stupid by doing simple trivia that they all get wrong. They make them eat disgusting things, sometimes disgusting amounts of disgusting things, multiple times in a season. They make them put football pads on and run head on into each other. They make them wrestle in the mud. All this crazy, wild, sometimes horrible stuff. They make them stay up all night just holding a car battery in their hands for freaking 12 straight hours. All this crazy stuff. Nothing they do comes anywhere near when they make people scratch paint off of something. It is freaking horrifying. I can't imagine the worst one of this. They've done it a few times. I don't even remember, this bad historian of me, which season it was. Somewhere in the late 20s, maybe early 30s. But they put like teams in a box, in a glass box that was all blacked out, and the team had to scratch the paint off the walls to get to be able to see and find a code and get out of this dark box. And everyone on it was complaining about how much it hurt and how the sound was horrible and it was so painful, and they likened it to torture. And that's the only thing I can liken this to. Scratching paint off of something is literal torture. It's horrifying. It's by far, if I was on this show, it is the one thing I'd be like, nah, dude, I'm not doing it. You can throw me into elimination. That is just so painful and so horrible. And maybe I'm being a big baby about it, but I don't care. I would much rather eat some ram testicle. I'd much rather stay up all night holding a car battery. I wouldn't much rather have to put on shoulder pads and run into CT. But if it was someone else, I would much rather put on the shoulder pads and take my chances running through a hall, whatever. Fuck the scratching. But that one definitely looked a lot harder than the other two. It played out that way in a big way. It didn't seem like there was a big time difference between people finding and getting to choose the game, but there was a huge time difference in how long it took the people doing the scratching to get through. So that sucks. And then we get to they get to pick the teams. And honestly, I was thinking so much about the new teams that I can't even tell you what happened in the second part of the daily challenge. I pulled the word count. I took over 1,200 words of notes for this episode, and the only single thing of all 1,200 words that I even wrote down for the second half of the daily challenge was one note said, "When Worlds Collide song drop was dope," which it was dope. And then wrote down, "Devin found a loophole, ?" which yeah, Devin, he put the rocks on top of the thing and lowered it, which I think was the whole point in the end. But then they still had to put more rocks aside. I don't know what the hell happened. All I was thinking about was these new teams trying to figure out, wait, who's on whose teams now? Can you put those pictures back up there? I don't even care who wins this anymore. So, daily challenge was great for the simple fact that getting to pick the teams mid daily challenge. The rest of it, I can leave. Don't totally need. Not even going to give it an official rating because it didn't feel like a had that extra. The drafting of the teams was the real element of it. The challenge itself wasn't even that big of an element. So on from that into the elimination, which was a wonderful sporting event. The game itself, very solid. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. A good, but not great. I kind of look at 8 to 10 as that great territory. So 7.5, the top of the good territory. I really, really liked it. They had to dig around in the sand, find 8 tires, bring them up, put the tires on a pole. Once all the tires were there, go over and watch a color sequence that went out of order, just showed you the colors in whatever order it was supposed to be. Go back over, rearrange the tires. Really, really liked it. A long physical endurance challenge with a puzzle at the end, but a puzzle that's both simple but could easily, if you make a mistake, it would cost you a good amount of time, because if you get one wrong and it's the third and fourth tire or the one thing you got wrong, you got to take 6 tires off and then put 6 tires back on to correct that, and that takes a decent amount of time. So really liked all parts of it. Main comment on the actual gameplay itself. Priscilla, strategy-wise, just what was she thinking? She goes in with the I'm going to use my legs strategy, and Ashley goes with the classic and the correct strategy with I'm going to use my hands because that's a lot faster. I think, and I don't know if it was just a sympathy confessional. It was maybe Tori says, Priscilla trying to save some energy to not gas out is going with the legs, but it looked like she literally used the legs the entire time, which bad strategy for 2 reasons. One, it is slower. It's a lot slower to try to push with your legs. You also then are using your arms as your base where all your weight is pushing off of, versus when you're moving with your hands. What Ashley did was very smart, was she dug her feet in the ground and pushed forward and used her whole lower body like she was doing one big squat of the stand to push the sand over and across and off. So it's just much more effective. But then the second reason is you're not just trying to move the sand, you're trying to find where the tire is in the ground. And with your feet, you're not going to notice if you touch that tire nearly the same as if you just dig your hand way down in there. And Ashley, on multiple of them, was not even starting by moving. She was doing the very smart thing of, all right, I'm at this pile. I kind of got this little circumference of area that it could be. I'm going to kind of dig my hands in and feel, oh, there's the tire. Could I just pull it straight out? No, okay, I'll push a little off, but I know exactly where I'm trying to push off, and then I'll pull it out. So all around, much better strategy from Ashley. Bad strategy from Priscilla. Was bummed to see that. As always, I would love to know how long this took. Just because I always want to know how long these eliminations take, but also in this one specifically to know how secure Ashley's lead may or may not have been, because she was basically 2, sometimes 3 tires ahead. She quickly got out to 5-2, and then when she got her 8th tire, Priscilla was just getting her 5th. And so 2 to 3 tires. Did it take them 1 minute to get 2 tires out? Did it take them 10 minutes to get 2 tires out? Was Ashley's lead, was a comeback possible, or was it like, oh, she's 2 tires ahead, dude? That's, it took her 12 minutes to get the last 2 tires out. So she's way, way, way ahead. She can take her time with this puzzle. So I would have, as always, I would love to know what the actual time of this took. And then finally, Ashley shedding some demons. 1-4 in eliminations since her win on Final Reckoning. So in her first 4 seasons, she makes 2 finals. She gets 2 wins, Invasion, Final Reckoning. And then the next 4 seasons, War of the World 1, 2, Total Madness, Double Agents. Coming in to this one, she was 1-4 in eliminations. Her only win in that time coming versus Nani in War of the Worlds 2. She kind of infamously last season on Double Agents lost 2 eliminations. Lost the first one, gets sent packing, but then comes back in as an injury replacement for Natalie and immediately gets thrown in and loses again. So as she says in the layer, she had some demons exercise, and she did. So that's great. Lovely to see. And we say our goodbyes to Priscilla. Another rookie gone, another stellar rookie campaign, another real great positive impact. The thing that's going to be tough coming out of the season is going to be that all these rookies went home so quickly, but all of them, even in sometimes either brief time on the show or brief time in the spotlight on the show, which Priscilla is a little more, wasn't totally involved all that much first 3-4 episodes. It feels like we got 3 or 4 real solid episodes of Priscilla content here. So many of them made a good impact in a small amount of time that it's like, how do we, there was 19 of you or whatever. We want to bring 13 of you back, but like we can't because we have to bring in a bunch more rookies and there's all these other lovely vets and everything. And so would love to see Priscilla back. Interested to see if we will. Same as we're interested to see all of these rookies that are making their mark. It's going to be very, very tough. Casting, it's a good problem to have a lot of quality people to cast, but really enjoyed Priscilla. Really thought she did well, handled herself well, had the strategy side of the game down, thought everyone loved her. She looked great on the screen, was lovely to listen to talk, love those UK accents all around, always have, always probably will on the show. And we'll see if, Big T and Kyle are kind of the only UK representatives of many that they've cycled through that they've brought back over and over. We'll see if Priscilla could potentially join them and continue a little UK alliance in the future. But we say our goodbyes to her and we say our goodbyes to the sports segment and move into our awards. So let's go hand out some hardware. All right, 5 awards to hand out. As always, best strategy, worst strategy, best quote, best moment, and MVP. So we start with the best strategy. 3 nominees. First nominee is Devin. Seems to be getting nominated almost every episode this season. He is playing a very good strategic game and is also just very clearly, as we referenced in the intro of this episode, is being a little more public with how much he's kind of running the game from a strategic level at this point, which is a reason you could almost say maybe worse strategy for how public he was about his whole spiel he gives in a nomination room. But ultimately, very good strategy to say, coming right in and say, our team talked and we have no idea, so everyone's on the table. Everyone has to plead their case. Everyone should talk to try to get as much information to come out as possible, to try, as he said, to get them to fight and to pick some arguments. Good strategy all around by him. And we'll then go ahead and just say nominee number 2 is the Emerald team as a whole. Just a solid, the proper pick in the situation they found themselves in when you kind of are slowly but surely getting more and more of the bits and pieces of the format, the new format that you're playing under. You don't know exactly how everything's going to work. That is not the time to take the shot and try to take out, your number one threat to beat you in a final or your number one enemy that you're trying to get revenge on or whatever. It is definitely was just a safe pick for them to say, hey, we're going with a rookie. We're going with the team that did the worst and is kind of already in shambles. And it's the rookie that kind of ruffled a bunch of feathers of the vets. So we're not necessarily saying we're sticking with this whole vet alliance even now that we're in these 3 teams. But for the time being, we're just kind of going with the safest. No one's going to get super upset about this pick. Even Priscilla herself, they kind of knew was going to be pretty cordial about it. So Emerald team as a whole, nominee number 2. Nominee number 1 was Devin. Nominee number 3 is Ed, who I really, really liked and was very impressed with in the moment. Ed was the first one to walk up to the 3 platforms and realize we're picking teams and to stop and say, you know what? I'm going to, 1, think about this, and 2, maybe wait for another person or 2 to show up and pick their team. Because when he comes up, I think he was the 4th person. Josh is on 1, Nelson's on 1, Cory's on 1. And Nelson right away is like, Ed, right here. Come on. You come with me, Ed, right here. And Ed's like, you know what? I want to wait. I want another person or 2 to show up. I want to see where these teams start to fall. And also, I just kind of want to think about it. I just got here. And so he does, he kind of by default ends up on Nelson's team anyways. He lets a couple people come and forget who all gets there. I think Devin comes and picks Josh's team first, but eventually he picks the right team because as we alluded to earlier, I think he's on the best team, and picking that team made it also easy for CT to look and say, they've got the one thing I want, two guys that can bring the strength and endurance. I'll bring the puzzles. Do I have females that I like working with? And so they get Devin, the number one draft pick, CT, picks their team in part because Ed was on there and he saw, I only got one rookie, but it's one I like and I could work well with and could be the one on. So regardless, Ed, good strategy. And because Devin's already won and a team victory is not that cool, I'm going to go with Ed gets the actual win for best strategy of this episode. So great job, Ed. Good on you. Our bias is coming through and through more and more with every episode. We just absolutely, I just absolutely adore Ed and everything about Ed. So he gets the best strategy. Let's talk worst strategy then. 3 nominees there as well. First one, we talked about earlier, so we don't got to go in depth here. Cory and Nelson, the splitting up, shouldn't have done it. I like that in the moment they're the first ones there and they don't know how this whole thing's going to shake out. And I like I would have at least had that thought too. That is the right thought to have is, do we stay together? Do we split up? And splitting up, there's the idea of, let's keep power amongst all the teams, but it didn't go their way. Everyone else went the other way and went with, let's keep alliances together. And while it helped Nelson in the end, Cory's now on the outs. Maybe Cory can find himself on their team, but they're nominated for worst strategy just because that really backfired poorly on them. Second nominee, Tori. Tori was, I think, maybe the most interesting pick of any of the teams. She went with the Emerald team, and at the time that she picked, it was because she said it was because Devin and Casey. Now, she has been working with Devin, but prior to this, it was known Devin, CT, Tori, Kyle, and Ed. They kind of lumped in Ed, but it was really of the vets wise, Tori, CT, Devin, and Kyle were all on the same page. And Tori, to my knowledge, doesn't seem to have anything wrong with Casey or any of the Big Brother folks, but wasn't necessarily on their side. And of the 3 teams that were kind of laid out last week, I would have thought that the Big Brother group would have been the third of 3 choices for Tori of where she would want to be. And she kind of had the opportunity to either be with Cory and be kind of on the Cory Nelson crew on the Ruby, or on the Sapphire one where Nelson was and where Ed, her former partner, was, and where CT was. And so maybe this was her and CT wanting, secretly doing the Cory Nelson, let's keep ourselves split up. But she goes on Emerald, and I think it was a missed opportunity because now, as we talked about earlier, we do think on the female half, the Emerald team has the edge with Casey and Tori, the kind of consensus top 2 physical competitors on the female side. But on the male side, I think the Sapphire team has the edge. And I think Tori missed a huge opportunity here to create just a dominant team. They had, at the time, CT, Nelson, and Ed, and Ashley were all up there available. And Tori could have joined that crew, and regardless of who then would have shaken out, if it's still Bettina, whoever would have ended up being as their 6th person, that would have been a monster team. And I think she made the wrong call. We'll see how things play out, but mostly she's just at the bottom of the totem pole, kind of unbeknownst to her. I think her and Devin are going to both find quickly that they just joined a team with Josh and Casey. They're ride or die together. And Casey is Nani, or obviously ride or die, and Nani and Josh, even without the Casey connection, also former partners at times, really like each other. And then Emmanuel coming in as like their one rookie that they've got that's been with Casey the whole time and will do anything she says. So those 4 really tight. And I feel like Tori and Devin are going to kind of be the 2 trying to do something different from the other 4 on their team, and Tori could have avoided that. So think she got the worst strategy. She was the most kind of confusing pick for me, that I would have thought it would have been obvious that she was going to go on the blue team. And then Priscilla is our 3rd and final nominee for worst strategy. Just pick Amanda over Ashley. I hate saying this because I love Amanda, and I'm so glad that she's back on the show. And everything that was said, singing her praises all through episode by Ashley and anyone else, deserved. She is a hero in real life. She's amazing person and mom, and I love her on the show. And it's no shots, no shade, but if I'm in Priscilla's shoes and I look up and say, well, I don't want to pick Bettina or Big T because those are my best friends in this house, I'm riding with them all the way. I can't pick anyone on the Emerald team. That just leaves Amanda and Ashley, pretty much, is who she is picking between. And while I applaud the I'm going for the champ. I'm going for the big one. I kind of picked a fight with you earlier. I might as well end it. Absolutely applaud that. Absolutely think that is awesome. And hats off to Priscilla for doing that. It is better TV. It is better entertainment. But sometimes, more often than not, good strategy is often bad TV. And people on this show have to weigh, do I want to make good TV or do I want to try to get further in this game, even if it is a boring method? But with respect to Amanda, if I'm Priscilla standing down there and it's kind of coming down to, am I going for Ashley or Amanda? That's kind of who I'm left with based on my alliances. I'm just going to pick Amanda and try to go with what I would say is a little bit easier of an opponent than the two-time champ, even given Ashley's recent struggles in eliminations. I just think there was a more balanced matchup versus Amanda. I would have picked her. So Priscilla, third nominee for worst strategy. And Cory Nelson, Tori, Priscilla, I'm giving the award to Cory and Nelson. Mostly, again, it just turned out to be really bad strategy. It wasn't, the idea of it was pretty sound and pretty good going in. It just completely and utterly backfired when everyone else went the other way. So Cory and Nelson, worst strategy. Now, let's talk quotes. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nominees for best quote. And we will just start off by saying this could just be a Kyle only section. There was easily 5 or 6 different quotes from Kyle in confessionals. He dominated the confessionals on this episode, and we easily could have just picked 5 or 6 of his, which we've picked multiple of his in past episodes. It's pretty easy to do almost every episode. He's so good in the confessionals, and just in the moment, everything that comes out of his mouth is gold. Love Kyle. Gotta have him on the show every single season. But we limited it to only 2 submissions from Kyle to give some room for some other people. So 6 total nominees in order of when they happened in the show. First one is Logan describing his conundrum with Big T and how horny she is versus how horny he is, or how much horny he was. So let's let Logan explain the situation in the end of the situation with Big T.
Yeah.
I only want a little bit of honey, and she wants all the honey. No more kisses, no more cuddlings, so no more.
What a way to explain the friend zone. Unbelievable stuff by Logan. Then we have Priscilla, nominee number 2, who at the beginning of the daily challenge explains to us that running, maybe not her favorite thing. So let's hear from Priscilla.
I don't like running unless my life depends on it, unless it's for money. And guess what? I got to do both of those things in this game right now.
Then we have CT explaining his decision-making process when walking up to those platforms, seeing we've got to pick a team, everyone's hollering for me, everyone wants me, what am I going to do? And he looks and he sees something that he cannot pass up in Nelly T and Ed. So let's hear CT's decision-making process on that.
Our house is right here, brother.
I see Cory with Amy and Priscilla. Too many rookies for me. But then I look in the middle, and I see 2 brand new sports cars. Nelly and Ed, right? Look at them, all shiny and new. Look at these workhorses.
All right.
Sound strategy, and as always, great sound bite. So then we've got our 2 nominees from Kyle again. Could have been 6 or 7. Limited it to 2. The first one, both have to do, almost all of his confessionals had to do with the teams and just him making fun of himself and the teams and everyone and which teams they were on. So we'll listen to them back to back. First one we picked of his was explaining what the only weakness the Emerald Squad had. And then second up, we'll play right after it, his desire to be on Team Emerald. So take it away, Kyle. 2 different nominees for Quote of the Week here.
The Emerald Squad. They have literally everything. They don't have a weakness. Their only weakness is if you say something mean to Josh and he ends up crying for half an hour. Ruby! Ruby for life! Ruby forever! Ruby in my heart! I love Ruby! God, I wish I was on Team Emerald.
Just the savagery that Josh has faced this season in the quotes. I feel like he's not only been in the worst strategy segment multiple times this season, but he's also been on the brunt end of a lot of Quote of the Week nominees this season. And something mean to Josh, and he ends up crying for a half hour. Kyle, can't love you. Can't love you anymore, Kyle. Our final nominee, our sixth and final one, then is Devin. And basically is his entire little monologue, both in the moment and in confessional. They kind of played them over, explaining to the women in the room that he needed to see some verbal fighting. So take it away, Devin.
So, ladies, you're all on the chopping block. We've deliberated before entering the chamber, and listen to me when I tell you, our mind is not made up. This is your time to legitimately plead your case. I want to hear their reasons for why they shouldn't go in. I want them to throw someone under the bus. I want to create a little bit of chaos. If you have something to say it now, or do not be surprised when your ass is down there tonight. You guys start fighting, please.
Those are the 6 nominees, and because he dominated the episode so thoroughly in this category, as much as I want to give this award to Logan for I only want a little bit of horny, she wants all the horny, I've got to give it to Kyle. And of his 2, we will go with his savagery towards Josh. The Emerald Squad, they have literally everything. They don't have a weakness. Their only weakness is if you say something mean to Josh and he ends up crying for half an hour. Love it, love it, love it. That is your winner of Quote of the Week. Then we'll move to Best Moment. 5 nominees here as well. Bettina, Priscilla talking their reasons for being there. That was a lovely, lovely scene. 2 rookies that we haven't gotten nearly enough of. Love getting to finally get some more from Bettina early in the season. It was like, are they editing this woman out? Why are we literally seeing none of her in an episode or 2 early on? We've slowly got a little bit more and a little bit more. Now we find out, she's a small town girl from Sweden, has these big aspirations. She's, out there to prove to the small town folks that, you can dream big. You can do a lot of stuff. Myself, coming from a very small town, really, really appreciates this sentiment, loves this sentiment, and really warmed me up even more to Bettina. I've loved everything we've gotten from her. I still think she's nearly batting 1,000 when she's on the screen, even if it's been pretty limited this season because of those limits. Every time she's been on the screen, I've either smiled or laughed or both. So this added to that. Priscilla talking about her mother and her mother's backstories, her whole family story, all of that was wonderful. That whole moment was wonderful. As mentioned earlier, nominee number 2 is the story Big T tells Logan. I need to know that story in full. I hope Big T will put that out to the world sometime soon. Nominee number 3 was the picking of the teams. That was definitely, kind of the build, the whole cliffhanger build up was to that moment of individual team. And then once his team's picking them, that whole moment was great. Then we get a very small moment. The smallest moment we've maybe nominated the whole season for best moment, but it was one I noticed and I loved and was so small that I was like, I don't know that anyone else would even notice this, so I want to make sure I pointed it out. And that was immediately after the daily challenge. They come back to the house. Everyone walks into the kitchen. And we get a brief, maybe 12 seconds of people walking into the kitchen and someone saying something, whatever. But kind of in the background of the scene, Nelson goes over to Josh and daps him up. They do a little handshake, little bro hug, the one hand bring it in, tap the shoulder, and they kind of smile, nod at each other. And the moment Nelson turns around, he goes from what must have been a very fake smile to just immediately, once he's out, his turned enough to be no longer face in the view of Josh, just boom to the stoic stone face, like, oh, I can't believe I just dapped that guy up type of face. And I just loved everything about it. Clearly, playing the political game, Nelly T out there, like, I'm friends with everyone, but also I don't rock with you. I don't like you and your alliance or whatever. So there was a very, very small little moment, but I saw it and I was like, I love everything about that. And then finally, Amanda, Ashley, the love fest for each other in and after the elimination. We talked a bunch about it before. Those are your 5 nominees for best moment. Bettina, Priscilla talking reasons for being there. The story Big T tells Logan. The picking of the teams. Nelson's totally fake dap up of Josh. And the Ashley Amanda love fest. I've got to give the best moment of the episode to that story Big T tells Logan. It was just so funny, and the whole splitting that with Logan and Josh's conversation while playing pool, everything about that. Again, with love for both of these people, and especially Big T. I don't want to see anyone get their feelings hurt or lose out on a romance that they were really, really into, but that whole scene was amazing and hilarious. And then finally, we got MVP of the episode. 4 nominees. Kyle's nominee number 1. Just wow. I mean, the confessionals, we don't have to talk anymore about it, but I could have just done all of the quote of the week with just him. But amazing stuff from Kyle there. CT, Nominee number 2 also got a couple votes for MVP. He was on the ballots for sure. A quiet MVP-like episode for CT, just asserting himself more and more, clearly being the one there everyone wanted on their team. There was only one consensus person, pretty much, maybe 2. Casey was also very consensus, but CT was clearly the prize, and he just kind of is asserting himself a little more, willing to be a little more open, again with that kind of amber shade that he was throwing out there, and just I think now sitting in a great position after this episode. So he got a couple votes, but it really came down to Priscilla, who was our third nominee. Had a fantastic episode. We learned a bunch more about her. She got a lot of time and a lot of shine in the spotlight. And even if she did lose the elimination in the end, this episode was very much, centered. If it was centered around any one person in the house, it was her as much as anyone. But the winner, the other person kind of tied co-equal to that this was centered around, was Ashley. She was the first one to get the scratching section of the Daily Challenge done, and God bless her for that. And again, fuck the scratching. Then she picked the right team. It was a very good selection on her part of picking the right team in the moment. She handled getting called in well, which is big for her. Not always what you would expect from her, getting called out into an elimination. She pumped up her best friend the whole episode, long spoke lovingly and glowingly of her. And then she kind of got that elimination monkey off her back. She exercised those demons, got the elimination win. So Ashley, easily, hands down, is the MVP of this episode. So those are your awards. Let's then move in to our final segment. Let's talk about some power rankings and add to our predictions for the rest of the season before getting out of here. And we ended with our power rankings that for the first time we posted on Instagram last week and became very, very controversial. So there is some movement in them. We'll post them again this week and see if we're a little more in line with consensus out there, or we're still a little bit on an island of our own on some of our opinions here. But we moved last week with the expectation that this was becoming an individual game, because back when we didn't have our theory and our prediction for teams back when we did the recap immediately after the episode that came later. So we moved it to individual power rankings and male rankings and female rankings, and we're going to keep it that moving forward. We will also just say from the team perspective, Sapphire, Emerald, Ruby, that's my ranking of the 3 teams. As we referenced earlier, I would go against what the house, or what the edit of the house's opinions would have us thinking, that the Emerald team is the unbeatable, unbelievable team. I think the Sapphire team is better. Overall, not by a lot, but by a little. Ruby team's definitely in third. But on the individual power rankings, we're going to do a male, we're going to do a female list, 9 and 8 respectively on those lists now, with one less female in the house. And again, the later in the season we go, these power rankings will be based on who I think is going to win or has the best shot of winning. But right now, it's kind of a 50-50 split between half of it is weighted towards who I think will make a final or has the best chance to make the final, and then about half weighted towards who has the best chance to win the final. So still about 50-50 split here. The later in the season we go, the more that weight goes towards who has the best chance of winning the whole thing and not just making the final. But making the final still a big part of this. Let's start with the males. I think last week we started with the females, so this week we'll start with the males. Top spot, no surprises here, CT. I think the way the team shook out, he's in a good spot. I think that, again, I don't think anyone's, as much as Devin and Josh are going to want him to go home and not want to see him in a final, and even a Cory and Nelson even feel the same way. I don't know who's gonna beat him in an elimination. I don't know who's gonna throw him into the elimination, knowing now that he gets to pick who he goes against. So I don't know. I feel like he's gonna end up in an elimination, because it would be really, really dumb if they went the whole time without trying to take him out. But I don't know who's gonna take him out. CT number 1. I'm putting Devin at number 2. Mostly because one of my season-long predictions is Devin's not gonna see an elimination, and as much as I think he is kind of on the bottom of that Emerald team, I don't think he's gonna see an elimination still. I feel like he's gonna he's just too much kind of controlling the game, and he's going to kind of skate his way, play a perfect strategic, political, social game all the way to a finals appearance. So he's in my number 2 spot. Nelson's in my 3rd spot, almost entirely off of, I just think he's in a really good spot on the teams with, Cory probably being the one that tries to get over onto his team. And with his team having Ed, the one rookie there, as on the male days, if they're not in power, potentially having that rookie as the kind of sacrificial lamb next to him. He also has a decent relationship with CT on his team. They ran that final versus each other in Invasion. So Nelson 3rd, Emmanuel 4th. I like the team he ended up on. And I do think that on that team, because of the way it shook out, I think they could win a decent amount of the dailies, and he could avoid the layer that way. And I just think that he's not as high on my list of the people that are either going to want to go into elimination to switch teams or get called out by someone else going into the elimination. So he moves up, and especially he's one that I think maybe his odds in the elimination might not be as high versus as many people in the house as others. If he gets to that final, I feel like that run that we've seen, he's fast, but I also think he might have the endurance side of this. So if he can get to that final, I think he's got a really, really good shot at performing really well in a final. So he's number 4. Josh is number 5, mostly because I think he just ended up on the right team. I think he's going to get called out to go into elimination. I could see him being the one vet that anyone else is like, if I'm going to go against someone, I want to go against him. He doesn't have a great elimination record, but he's number 5. Ed number 6, Cory 7, Kyle 8, Logan 9. Logan goes from 2 to 9, by far the biggest drop, and that's simply because it sounds like he's injured, and if he's not, he's on the worst team and is the rookie, and it's a guys week next week, and I just feel like he might end up seeing a bunch more eliminations than I thought a week ago, and he might be injured. So he's at the bottom. I think Kyle and Cory are right behind him just because, again, of that team they're on. Just the Ruby team's last place on the male side, pretty much, is where we ended up there. On the female side, we're going with Casey at the top, Amanda 2, Tori 3, Nani 4, Ashley 5, Big T 6. I wrote Big T down twice here. Made a mistake somewhere along the lines. Big T, Emmy 6-7, Bettina 8. The reason behind most of this is pretty much Casey's at the very top, because I think she's physically, her and Tori are kind of the class of the remaining females, and she is in the best position of those between her and Tori. Is in a really, really good position as far as what team she is on and the power she's going to have within that team. I think Amanda comes in number 2, edging out Tori, because I think Amanda is in a perfect spot similar to what we said with Devin, to just make it to the final without seeing an elimination at any point. I could see her getting called out because, as I said on the Priscilla strategy thing, I think she is going to be viewed with this pretty impressive crop of females left. I think Amanda could be viewed as for the other rookie females that are left as the vet they would want to go against, a little bit smaller or not as physically imposing as some of the other vets that they could be picking from. But I think she's in a really good spot, going to walk to a final. Amanda's 2, Tori's 3. And only reason Tori even drops from 2 or even 1 is, again, because I think she chose the wrong team, and I think she's just not as solid on the team that she's on. So a little crack in the armor there for her. But 3rd spot, 94, Ashley 5, Big T, Emmy, Bettina 6, 7, 8. Could have been in any order. Mostly just feel like those are going to be the 3 that are chosen, either voted to go into the elimination or maybe want to go in elimination. It feels like Emmy might quickly be like, I want to be back with Uncle CT on his team, so I'll go in again, or chosen as the one that are going to go down. So just think they're going to end up in there multiple times if they were to win the first one that they go into. So that's your power ranking. CT and Casey holding down the top spot. Then for predictions, we'll be making our 11th. We've made 10 season-long predictions so far. We'll quickly run through them. I'm calling 2 of them wins now at this point. Our very first one was Tori would have 5+ partners. She had 4. We knew she was about to have a 5th, and then we switched from partners to teams. I'm counting the team as a fifth. I'm giving myself a win on that one. I think that one counts. I know it's a technicality. I know it shouldn't fully count, but I'm saying it counts. Same thing with later on, we made a CT is going to be picked as a partner 2+ times. He was also same scenario, about to be picked for the second time. Everyone wants him. He's on a new team. People are gonna come to his team because of him. So I get that one right too. Fessy first vet targeted. We got that one wrong. CT is going to win. Still in play. Also still correct. Devin will make it further and Josh still in play. Ed will make the final. Still in play. Anissa will make the final. We got that one wrong. That is the only one so far we have totally gotten wrong. Josh and Amber will not make the final. Half of that is right. Half of that still in play. We will not see any more DQs for injury or fighting. Logan's making us question whether we might get that one wrong, but still in play for now. And then last week we said Devin will not see an elimination unless a rule or purge forces everyone to do so. But otherwise, Devin will not see an elimination. Still in play, looking good so far. We're going to add one more new one, an 11th to our season-long predictions. So far, we've got 2 right, 1 wrong. The rest still in play. The new one we're adding is the Ruby team is the cast-offs team. Everyone wants off it, and I'm saying 2+ Ruby team members will volunteer for elimination in hopes of making the switch. I think the first one's going to happen next week. I think Cory or Kyle, one of the two of them, is immediately going to say, I'll go in and get that switch, or try to get that switch. So 2+ Ruby team members will volunteer for elimination to make the switch. That is our new prediction, and that is all for this action-packed episode of Spies, Lies, and Allies. Episode 10 is in the books. We've entered the second half. We've entered a brand new game, Cutthroat 2, essentially. We're in for a wild ride. I'm still standing firmly behind this. This is a very good season so far. It's not one of the greats, but we only get a few of those, one every once in a while. We haven't had one in a good while, but more on that on another day, another podcast. But been a good season so far, and this is just kicking it up into another gear. And as we've been saying all season long, for once, kind of backwards of regular challenge seasons, we could see the back half and the final third be the most entertaining, the most exciting of the whole season, when usually it's kind of when things aren't quite as suspenseful or fun or entertaining. I think we could be in for a great back half and great last third of the season. So make sure, if you agree with me, if you're going to keep watching the show, which you should obviously continue watching the challenge. You should never, no matter even if you think this season sucks, never give up, because these seasons change so much season to season. We've got All-Stars coming. We will talk a lot about that in the weeks to come. As we mentioned that early on, we will be doing All-Star podcast. We will cover that show the same. We'll just up our amount for 3-4 weeks when they overlap, and we'll have multiple recaps going each week. We will do a big breakdown of the cast and a preview podcast here in the next week or two leading into that. So all that's coming. Make sure you are subscribed, following wherever you're listening. Spotify, hit the follow button. Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button. Rate, review. Those help us a lot and help more people be able to find us. Follow us on Instagram at Challenge Historian if you want more content, both from these podcasts and otherwise. Follow us on YouTube, where we'll be dropping early next week our first non-podcast related, just standalone video where I, Jacob Hollabaugh, your challenge historian, fix the challenge and pitch the perfect season of the challenge. And I mean it. I mean perfect, best season ever there could ever be. We've got it. We've got it scripted out. We've got it written down. We're going to film that, record it, get it up for you early next week. So Jacob fixes the challenge. There's nothing to fix. I shouldn't say fix. Jacob makes the perfect challenge season. There we go. So follow on YouTube, Challenge Historian. Follow on Instagram, where we're going to be posting a lot of content in coming days and weeks about this season, about All-Stars, about old historical seasons. We're breaking down Fresh Meat 2 right now. We're in the midst of our deep dive into that season, so there's content coming on that. All kinds of stuff. Follow there. Follow here. Listen every week. Thank you so much for being here. It is an honor and a privilege to have anyone, especially you listening right now, listening to this recap, to these podcasts. So thank you for being here so much. I will talk to you again next Tuesday for our review preview heading in to episode 11. Until then, peace.